Hello everyone, and welcome back to another virtual farm tour here at Chatsworth Farm. We are in our garage again. Last time we were here we were looking at some of the turkey eggs that I had just received in the mail, and today we're going to be looking at something else that I have in the incubator right now, and you might be able to hear some faint cheeping. So I have chicks that are starting to hatch right now. One hatched earlier this afternoon, and then the second one has hatched in the last couple of minutes. So I'm going to switch the camera over so we can take a look at the chicks that I have. So here's the incubator, and it is a little bit dark, but I have the light, and you might be able to see one chick that's just crawling out of view right now. And then the other one might be somewhere all the way at the back. And normally I would open the incubator and let you take a look, but right now the incubator is in lockdown, so that means that we're not allowed to open it. We're not allowed to take a look at the chicks inside until I'm confident that the ones that are going to hatch have hatched. And lockdown also means that we've raised the humidity in the incubator, so as the chicks are starting to hatch, the membrane that they're wrapped in, that's on the inside of the shell, doesn't sort of shrink wrap and make it really difficult and sometimes impossible for them to hatch. So we keep the humidity fairly high right now. It's at 67%. So here we have all the controls. This one's a fancy one. It's all digital, and I'd like to thank my friend and our neighbor Diane for letting me borrow this one until our new incubator arrived. So we're doing this one, and I believe I have 32 eggs in here right now. So started with 42, that's the maximum that the turner holds. And then through that process, I'll candle them throughout the first couple of weeks, and take out any that maybe weren't fertile in the first place or stop developing at some point during the incubation time. So we ended up with 32, which I'm really happy with. And also you might be able to see sort of the second egg down from the top. So there's a pink egg, and then there's a greenish egg. You might be able to see that it has a slightly raised shell. So that's what's called the egg has pipped, or the chick is pipping its way around the base, so the blunt end of the eggshell where the air sac is. And so it'll make its way all the way around until it's fully ready and fully kind of chipped away at the eggshell on the inside. And then it uses its back, it uses its wings, it uses its feet to be able to push itself out of the eggshell. And it does take quite a while. They sort of get in the process 3 days before they hatch. So they go into lockdown on day 18, and hatch day is day 21, give or take. They don't always conform to that schedule. Some will be a little bit early and some will be a bit later. But general rule is day 18, we take the eggs out of the turners, since they need to be turned at least 4 times a day to make sure that the embryo and the chick doesn't get stuck on one side. So we take the turner out, and then we increase the humidity, and we try and separate the eggs out as much as possible so they're not all crowded together, since that can make the hatching process for the chicks quite tricky. And then I also have them marked with X's on them, so that's the side that I set them down on. So if I see that the X has moved around, I can tell that the chick is starting to move and start its hatching process. But also when you get a bunch of the chicks that have hatched, like these two, they kind of move around a lot and they'll disturb the other eggs. So it's not really a great indication as you get further along in the hatching process when you have a lot of chicks, because they'll move the eggs around. But then there's also an egg at the top of the incubator, so at the back. It's one of the blue ones, and it's in that group of 3. So it's starting to move a lot, and I can just see that it's rotated enough that I can see the little pip on the outside. So everything is looking really good. I'm excited to see what color chicks I'm going to get out of most of these eggs. The majority are purebred lavender Orpington, so I know exactly what I'm going to get from those eggs. The chicks are going to be sort of a lavender slate gray color, but then the rest are all a surprise. The rooster is a black copper Marron, and the hens are a variety of different breeds, so it'll be quite the variety. And once they all hatch, then we can take a look at all the chicks. But for now, they get to stay in lockdown. I like to see that there's lots of condensation in here, so that means that the humidity is at a good point. So that's that. Not super exciting at the moment, especially because the chicks have moved. But they're really loud, and you can hear them all the way through the garage. And it's much nicer to have them in here than it is in the house. It kind of keeps the decibel level down. But we are going to go and feed Rosie. I have her milk here that we mixed up. She's just outside. She's in the other part of the garage since she followed me to the house. And she kind of nibbles on a few things, so we just kind of locked her in here. Come on, Rosie. So Rosie is our bottle lamb. She is a neighbor's, actually. She's a hair sheep, so she looks quite different than your typical woolly sheep. And she's a cross between two breeds. The first is Mouflon, which is a Mediterranean breed, and then the second is an American black belly. So both are haired sheep, so she looks quite a bit different than all those other sheep breeds like the Suffolk and Dorset, the ones that we have. So her ears are much shorter, her tail is a lot shorter, and she also has hair instead of wool. Now both hair sheep and wool sheep have both types of fibers. So they have both hair and wool fibers, but depending, if you're a hair sheep, you have more hair fibers than you do wool, and if you're a wool sheep, you have more wool fibers than you do hair. But there are a lot of differences. The way she behaves is very different. Mouflon and American black belly are a little bit more wild than some of your wool sheep. They still carry a lot of those wild traits and characteristics, whereas domestic sheep are a little bit more I don't know the way to describe them, but you can tell there's a difference between the two, just the way she acts compared to the wool lambs that we have. This is also one of our cats. He's one of our kittens. He was born in November, and they spent most of the winter in the shop since their mother had had 2 litters of kittens, and she kind of decided that her second litter was, she was just going to leave them in the shop and going to let us take care of them. So they're very friendly, and they follow me to the house quite often. So it's a bit of a trek, but everybody seems to make it. So we have the dog, our livestock guardian dog, Lizzie. Over here we have a nice view of the backside of our farmyard. Most of our bigger buildings, so our shop buildings, our livestock handling facility, some of our pole sheds, they all have the green steel on the outside. And then 2 of our hen houses have red boards on the outside. And then our feed shed also has red steel on it. I haven't touched about any of the machinery at all since it's not as, it's not moving right now, so it's maybe not as interesting as some of the animals actually are, but we have a track hoe, so we use this for various projects that include digging dugouts for us and then for neighbors. We have our air seeder at the back, our Fendt tractor, so it's a German-made tractor. So that's some of the machinery. Most of it's parked in a different part of the yard. We also like to keep a lot of it under a roof so it doesn't get rained on and it doesn't wear or fade just from the weather. We have our mother Henning Chicks. So we have 2 of these crates that stay outside and we just move them around every morning or periodically throughout the day, depending on how much they've eaten or how much they've kind of dug up the grass and the soil. So the chicks are growing very well. This hen hatched out 7 of her own chicks. There's 6 in here right now because one of them is in with the other hen. It just kept escaping. And then we retrofitted this crate and now it's not able to escape, but I just haven't moved it back. And right now, since the chicks are starting to grow more feathers and we're able to see the color patterns that we're going to get from a few of these chicks, most of them are going to be black, so they have maybe some white tips to the edges of their feathers or maybe around their eyes. And then there is one all the way at the back and it's very faint and they develop a more striking pattern as they get older, but at the back it's going to have some white wing bars and white barring along its feathers. So I can kind of tell that a little bit from here. Because they are different crosses, they are going to have various different color patterns and variations. This mother hen's really good and protective. If I tried to go and pick one of these chicks up, she would get quite fierce with me. So we're just going to leave her and her chicks alone. But they're getting to the point where they're almost getting big enough. We'll give them a couple more weeks before they can go outside. But they'll stick right close to her and she'll protect them very well. So we have the 2 other crates over at the back. So the first one closest to us is the other set of Henning Chicks. So we've seen them before and they're very similar. They same rooster, so they're all the same coloring for the most part. And then this one here that we're looking at right now, it had geese and goslings in it, but I actually sold all of the goslings that I currently had to a lady from Oyen. So she came this afternoon and she got 10 of the goslings. But I'm going to have more hatching out very soon. I still have 3 females who are sitting on eggs, and then another 2 females decided they were going to set on more eggs as well. So I should have goslings hatching all the way into July. This is the other hen, so her chicks are a little bit smaller. We don't see as much feather development on them yet, except for that yellow one, which is from the clutch that we saw before. And you can see the chicks kind of hop up onto the back of the hen at times, and I think it just gives them a good vantage point. I don't think there's any scientific reason that they do it. I also have some grain for them right here so you can see how they eat and how the hen kind of shows the chicks how to feed. At this point, they really know what they're doing. They don't have to be told. They don't have to be told how to eat or where to find food, but the hen continues to cluck at them, to scrape the grain around their little feeding area. And they're getting the same feed that they did the first day that they were introduced to feed. So it's a mixture of wheat, flax, and peas. So it's grain that we grow ourselves, and then we grind it with a hammer mill. So it breaks everything up into more consumable pieces for the chickens because they don't have teeth, so they're not able to chew their food. But they do have gizzards, so that's what they use to process and kind of grind their food up. And in addition to the gizzards, they also need something to assist in that process. So if you give them small stones or grit, that'll help them with the grinding and the digestion of whatever it is they're eating. So in this feed, we give them oyster shell, so that acts as a grit. It also provides them calcium, so that's important for their bone development. And if this hen was laying eggs, and she's not right now because she's looking after chicks, so hens will do one or the other. They'll either be laying eggs or they will be raising chicks. So right now she's doing the chick part of the equation. So she's not going to be laying any eggs, but she needs calcium as well because an eggshell is made up of 94% calcium. So it takes a lot of calcium, and they need to be able to consume a lot to be able to sustain their own growth and their body weight and condition, as well as producing eggs. They also have their water here. They don't drink very much water throughout the day, so we just fill it up for them once in the morning with clean water that we get from our hydrant and our well. And the hen does scrape quite a bit of grain and grass into it, so we'll just empty it out, usually once a day, so they can it can be free from any of the grass or the grain. But they never run out of water because they don't drink very much, and there are not very many birds in here. And we have just a tarp strap here, so we hook it on the front so nothing can get in, or this can't fly up, especially on windy days like today. And Rosie was fed a little bit earlier. I think she was fed at 4:30. So we'll check and see if she's hungry. She wasn't really all that hungry before. Lizzie, quit it. So I have the rest of the ducks and geese out here, and some of the hens. So each time at feeding now, Rosie, I'll usually mix up a cup and a half of milk replacer for her. And so it's a cup and a half of water and then half a cup of milk powder. Or if you're doing just a cup, then it's a half. But she'll drink many times through the day, but usually won't drink that full amount at one sitting unless it's been a longer period in between feedings. But because she does get fed so often, she can go a little bit longer if she has to, if some people aren't around for part of the day. So I work off the farm, and then my brothers are usually busy seeding. My dad is off doing some construction projects, so Mom is at home and she feeds Rosie throughout the day. But she's busy gardening, and Rosie can kind of be a little bit, she can stay by herself for a little bit longer if she has to, especially now that she's older. So we have a couple of the Rouen ducks. So I have 7 ducks in my flock. Not very many, but I am working on increasing that. We have some eggs underneath one of the geese, one of the female geese, and those should be hatching on June 4th. So it takes quite a bit longer for duck eggs to hatch, and then for goose eggs to hatch, it takes even longer still. So we have this female right here. She is sitting on some duck eggs. I believe there are 12. I candled them last weekend, I think it was, and 2 of them weren't fertile, so they weren't developing. So I just took those out, and that helps to prevent anything extra from being in the nest that doesn't have to be. So if they're not going to hatch, they don't need to be in the way of the eggs that are developing. But everything else was looking good. You can start to see the ducklings moving around in there. And as they get closer to their hatch date, you're actually able to candle them, and you can see their bill moving around, so you can see the tip of their bill and part of their wing. So those are good signs. That means that everything is moving as it should. It's kind of like an ultrasound in a way, so you're, but in this case, you're just shining a bright light into the blunt end of the eggshell, so where the egg sac is, and there's air there, and there's space, so you're able to see inside and what's developing. If you have a really dark eggshell, so some of my chicken breeds lay fairly dark eggs, either brown or olive, you have to have a very dark room and a quite powerful light to be able to see inside, or else you're not going to be able to see any particular details. But if you have a lighter colored shell, like some of the eggs that are pink or white, you're able to see fairly easily. So you can just hold the light up. Even in this building right here, just kind of go to a dark corner and you're able to see quite a bit of the development. So we have this goose over here. We have 2 over there on the side, so their eggs should be hatching any day now. I don't have the dates written down as far as when the females started to set, so it's just check on them, listen for any peeping, and then carefully move them and get the goslings out and move them into one of those crates. We have the 2 females over there. We have 2 females, which can't really see at the back. They're all the way at the back. They just decided to sit on eggs, so they've been laying eggs for probably half the month now, and they're going to be hatching those out. I'm going to give one some more duck eggs, since my duck is laying eggs, but she's not doing anything with them currently. So we're going to give some more duck eggs to the geese, since they're a little bit more proactive about the hatching. And I'd go in there, but I have a whole host of animals. I have the dog, who knows to stay out, but Rosie doesn't. And she kind of gets in the way, and she stirs the geese up, and they get a little bit upset with everyone here. So you can see that all the males and some of the other females are right here. They're trying to get us to go away. And because we just are at the front, they're not too aggressive yet, but if we go in, they'll get a little bit loud and try and get us to go away. We have our kittens that are growing very well. They're over here in our rooster house. So they're not really staying in their little corner anymore. They're exploring lots. You open up the door and they're kind of everywhere. There we go. Close the door so we can open things up without it shutting on us. They're getting to the point where they are eating more solid food, so we've been giving them some just regular cat food with some milk. So we'll give them, if Rosie doesn't drink some of her milk, they'll get some of that. So the whole outside world is still pretty new to them, and they're not quite sure what to make of the dog yet. But once they get a bit older, they'll be outside, and the hen will kind of move them outside so they can be closer to the food, so they can start joining the other cats. But she'll probably give them another couple of weeks, since they still are quite young. And so Rosie's in here with us, of course, and the kittens are quite unsure of what she's doing here. So the kitten has its back raised and its hair standing up, and it's slightly growling at her, and it was hissing at her when she got a little bit closer. So it's quite fun to watch the kittens kind of discover the new world around them. And once they get to the point where they understand that everything around here is something that they need to get used to, they get along quite well with everything. So we have this little calico one. So calicos are usually females. We've never come across any calico cats that have been male. We do find that any of the orange kittens that we have, or any of the orange cats, they tend to be males. You can get orange females, but for our farm, whenever we have an orange cat, it's always a male. But we have this one calico. We have 3 kind of tabbies. They're a little bit different shades. This one's a little bit more black, and the other 2 are more brown. But very similar, little white paws, little white socks on their paws. And then there's one single gray one. And the litter of 5 seems to be the perfect number for this mother cat. She's doing very well. She seems to stick with, I would say, 4 to 6 is what she tends to have as far as a litter of kittens. We used to have a female cat, was a calico cat named Callie, who we had for many years, and she would have up to 10 kittens, and that was quite a lot, and you could tell that put a lot of stress on the cat. But 5 is a great number, and they're all quite chunky, pretty thick. And they've been growing very well. So already this one seems to be quite content with me, giving it some extra love. There you go. Well, that's enough kitten cuteness. We're going to go take a look at some of the cattle, because I know that Nick and Alex are going to be moving some of them out tomorrow, so it's going to be one of our last chances to see some. A few of our cow-calf pairs are going to stick around because my brothers are going to do some AIing, so artificial insemination, and I think they're going to do some embryo transplants. So those cows will be sticking around here, but I'm not quite sure which ones they are. They have specific females picked out for that. But the rest of the herds are going to be moved out to our various pastures that we own. Some are north of Manville, some are south of Vermilion, and then we have a few that are north of Vermilion where we are. So they'll be moving a majority of the cattle out. And we won't put the bulls in yet. I believe they schedule the bulls to go in with the cows on June 5th. They might have changed that, but that's usually when we put the bulls in with the cows for breeding season. So we have a few of them up here. The cattle like to stay up here by the water and also where the mineral is, because it's there's a lot of dirt, and the dirt helps to combat the mosquitoes and flies, so they're able to get away from them for a bit. We have a really nice sky out today, still windy again, but that seems to be the norm. This is one of our first calf heifers, so she had her first calf this year. Checking out the sheep. So we divide the cattle into different groups. So depending on Their breed, if they are a specific breed or my brothers want to put a specific pairing in with the cows and the bulls, they'll match them out that way, or they'll match them by their physical characteristics and their age, depending on the animal. We have a few of the calves. So these two are steer calves, so we use the blue tags for the males and the yellow tags are for the females. And these male calves are castrated male calves, so it's similar to what you would have in a neutered dog. So these males won't be able to reproduce when they get older. So we keep them for our beef, and we use the females. If they fit the qualities that we want to add to our breeding program, we keep them as replacement heifers, and they go on to be mothers themselves. This calf right here who's coming up close, he is the son of one of my old 4-H cows, Century, who's right here. We saw Century in the last video as well. So you can see this calf has 4-H written on his tag, so we can know that he is Century's calf. So Century and I had a good long career in 4-H together. I used her first as a heifer, and then a 2-year-old cow-calf pair and a 3-year-old cow-calf pair. So as a heifer, she's just a yearling, or a little bit older than a yearling. And the following year, that summer, she'll be bred, and then the following year, you'll take her back to 4-H, and you'll show her, hopefully, with calf at side. And so that year I did, and she had a calf the following year, so I brought her back and showed her as a 3-year-old cow-calf pair. And that's as many years as you can show or use your female project in 4-H. And then after that, you will start all over. So you'll pick another heifer out and do that same process. And depending on the cow or the heifer, you might have a really fantastic heifer, but she just doesn't fit, or she doesn't work well as being a cow in 4-H, and that does happen. I did have a few cows that I used them as heifers, and they were great, but they just didn't work out as a cow-calf pair for the whole 3 years. So I maybe used them just for 2 years, or maybe just one. But for the most part, all of the cow-calf pairs that I had, I used them for all 3 years. And they get to be old hats at going into town, showing them, grooming them, and washing them. So they get quite a spa treatment from the whole process. Most of these calves around here, they are steer calves. There are a few heifer calves just lingering. It's usually a 50-50 split. We do seem to get waves of whether it's heifers all at once or bull calves all at once. That seems to be how it works during calving. At one point, you'll just have so many. You'll have 10 heifer calves in a row, and you'll have no bull calves, and you'll wonder what's happening. And then it'll kind of even out. So by the end, you'll end up with about a 50-50 split. Most of our cattle have Black Angus influence in them, so you can see their black coloring. Some of these cows, some of the bigger cows, so the two in front of me right now, they have Maine Anjou in them. So they have a Maine Anjou influence. Maine Anjous are a French breed, so traditionally they are red and white. But then when they were brought over to Canada in the 70s, and after people had had them for a while, the black coat became very popular in most cattle breeds, so they transitioned and were bred to present a black coat. So they do have some Maine Anjou blood in them, and they're also descendants of some of the first Maine Anjou cattle brought to Alberta, and this part of Alberta specifically. And we purchased them from our neighbors when they were doing a herd dispersal. So we just walked them down the road in January when we purchased them 4 or 5 years ago. So there are a few cows out here. They're quite old. They're probably up into 18, 19 years old. And they are still that traditional red and white color. And they look very similar to what traditional Maine Anjou cattle look like. The rest of these calves have Simmental in them, or they have some Hereford. These two calves right here have Simmental. And when they're all black, or they don't have any extra markings like some white or any other spots or blazes on their face, it's really difficult to tell what breed they are. You're not able to tell what breed makes up one of the calves just by looking at it. But we know what bull this calf's cow was with, or this, yeah, I think that was right. This calf's mother was with, and we have that marked on their tag. So this calf's has Raleigh written on his tag. So Raleigh is one of our Simmental bulls, and he's one of our red Simmentals. One of our others is, we have two black ones with some white on their face. And what also kind of gives it away is this calf has a little white snip on his nose. So any that have a little piece of white somewhere, especially on their face, that's a good indication that they are Simmental. We have one of our Hereford calves. So our bull that we have is, one of our bulls, our largest bull is Conquest, and he's a Hereford. So Herefords are one of the oldest breeds of cattle. They're a British breed, so they originated in the UK, in Herefordshire. And traditional Herefords, you can get either horned Herefords or polled Herefords. So our bull Conquest is a polled Hereford, and all of our bulls that we get are polled, so that means that they naturally don't have horns. And that's just a personal preference. Some farmers and ranchers like their cattle to have horns, and if you have cattle like Texas Longhorns, that's a huge part of the breed, so you would never want animals without horns, because that doesn't make sense for anything like a Texas Longhorn. But we find having polled cattle works best for us. And it can be a little bit more difficult nowadays to find cattle that are naturally horned, as most breeds have a polled variation within their breed. So here we have one of our really nice heifer calves. She's out of either a Black Angus or a Simmental, so her mother was with both bulls. So we have both of her potential sires listed on her tag, so one on the left-hand side and one on the right. And cattle are always kind of good for selfies. It's a little bright, but we have Century in the background. Everyone's quite interested in Rosie. So you can see the calves are getting quite close. They wouldn't necessarily get this close if I was here. They don't really care all that much about me. I'm not as interesting as she is. We do have a few calves out here who have some additional tags. So they'll have either an extra green tag or an extra purple tag. The green tags are the ones are purebred Black Angus. So this heifer calf right up here, number 22D, she's a purebred Black Angus. And then any of the calves who have an additional purple tag, they belong to my brother, so they're part of their herd. Like this little heifer calf over here, she has the purple tag, so that's one of theirs. And we are done calving. We finished calving at the beginning of the month. And so some of these calves vary in age as far as their size. So some were born February 24th and the others were born May 4th. So there is a gap, but they usually catch up fairly quickly. And especially when the cows are given lots of high energy, high protein feed, they produce a lot of milk. And when the calves are healthy, they grow at a very fast rate, and they'll gain about 3 pounds a day. And by the end of the summer, when we bring all the cattle home, they'll all be roughly the same size. Definitely the younger calves will be a little bit smaller than the calves who were born a bit earlier. But they'll all have filled out, and a lot of them will be half the size of their mothers, especially if they're the first calf heifers. So we have a bit of a following here right now. This is one of our cows who's actually a shorthorn cross. She has shorthorn in her bloodlines. So they're all very interested in Rosie. They all can get a little bit excited. So just make sure that Rosie's not getting in between too many of them, because they are quite a bit bigger than she is. But I'm pretty confident that they're not going to do anything to her, get to step on her, or to push her too much. She falls within the kind of prey category rather than the predator category, whereas the dogs and the cats are not as welcome, where she can be in here and they kind of understand that she's not something that could potentially hurt them, but she's just very interesting. So we're going to pop over out of the cow pen. We're going to quickly walk down to the bulls. We looked at them the other tour, I think the one before the last one. And so they're all going to be put out around the first week of June, beginning part of the second. So I have quite a bit of bull power in this pen. We have Angus, Simmental, and Hereford. And we got 2 new bulls who were delivered a couple of weeks ago. One from Country Lane Angus, so a farm south of Vermilion. And then the other one all the way from Coaldale, Alberta, so he had quite a long drive from U2 cattle. So they are both our yearling bulls, so they'll go with our yearling heifers, so all the heifers who were born last year. So you can see the size difference. This bull that's in front of me is the U2 bull. So you can just see how much shorter he is, and he will grow. He'll get quite a bit bigger. He's only just over a year old, so he has a lot of growing and maturing to do. But they're all really nice and friendly. So we make sure all of our bulls have a good temperament. So we can walk in here with all of the bulls and not have to worry. Make sure that they're all in top condition before they go out with the cows, because they will have a busy summer. And they are definitely ready to go out and do their job. So they're in with our cows for 62 days, and then our heifers for 45 days. So that's the amount of time that they're in there with the females, and then they get pulled out. So that keeps our calving season nice and condensed, so it doesn't spread it out. We try and get the cows bred on their, hopefully their first cycle, and if not, their second cycles. With the heifers, that's sort of our maximum cycle. And then the cows, we do offer a little bit more time, mostly because there are a lot more cows, and the cows are also proven calvers, so we want to give them the opportunity to have a calf for the following year. Down our alleyway, another nice windy day. All of these wooden slats that we have on our fences, or most of our fences, are called windbreaks. And those are used to help break the wind and cut the wind when the animals are in and around these pens during the winter. So you don't have the windbreaks, a full sheet of wood, because otherwise a very strong wind will break it. So you want to be able to have a little bit of space in between, so that lets some of the wind come through and doesn't break anything or wreck anything. But they're spaced closely enough together that it helps to keep the animals out of the elements. This is my quarter horse mare. And I haven't gone riding lately, but usually I try to go after work. We just go up and down the country roads that are right by our house. She's quite used to machinery, so I don't have to worry about anything coming by and scaring her too much. Especially right now, a lot of farmers are moving their machinery and equipment up and down the road, so that's a lot bigger than your average size truck or car. So for a lot of animals, that can be quite scary and something that they're not used to, and it can cause a little bit of distress. But she's used to a lot of machinery around here, so I'm comfortable riding her around the roads. And at the moment, because some of the fields aren't seeded yet around here, we do go through the fields, and that safely gets us where we need to go. But once the fields are seeded and everything starts to grow, we definitely stay out of the fields, but then go back in them once they've been combined at the end of the summer or in the fall. And that also those are the busy times of year for farmers and vehicles going up and down the roads. So that lets us go riding safely, and the neighbors don't have to worry about us, and we can just kind of go for a ride and not be concerned about any oncoming traffic. So hopefully this weekend we can go for a ride. The dog usually comes with us, so it gives everybody a good workout. Sonia is a mare, so she is capable of having a foal if I decided to breed her. We don't have any stallions here, so not able to get any foals just by putting a male in with her, so I'd have to take her to get bred. So maybe one year I'll decide that I'd like to get a foal from her, since she does have really good bloodlines and pedigree, and I think she'd make a really good brood mare. But for right now, we are content to just have her and ride her. So Lizzie's back. We have Rosie. I think that's going to be it for today's tour. I think we covered just about everything. I was glad we were able to get to the cattle before they get moved out. We will still have some of the cows and calves around the yard, the ones that are going to be bred in a different way than natural breeding, so artificial insemination and embryo transfer. So those are very exciting and very technical ways of doing breeding or getting different genetics into your herd. So we might have some bulls that we're wanting to use on some of our cattle, and they might not even be around anymore, but there are straws available from those herd sires, so we're able to get them, and you can buy as many as you want, and it's a fairly economical way to increase the genetic diversity in your herd. And my brothers have taken an artificial insemination course at Lakeland College, so they're able to do it by themselves. So that also gives them the opportunity to do it on their own timeline, which is one of the hardest things to kind of coordinate. So maybe we can do a quick video whenever they're doing that, since it is quite an interesting process. But in the meantime, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed tonight's tour. Enjoy the sunshine and have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.